How would you feel when you walk into a place and people treat you as irrelevant? People give you that impression that you are not our type, you are not our specification. That was David's story. When David went to the field, people looked at him and treated him like he was irrelevant. They looked down on him. His brothers even scolded him and said, "What are you doing here? Are you not supposed to be looking after the sheep and the goats?" But by the time Saul, the king, began to notice David, David's life began to change, and his brothers also had no choice than to begin to notice him. His brothers had no choice than to begin to pay attention to him. I don't know who I'm talking to today, but people have been treating you as irrelevant. But very soon, they will begin to treat you as important. When kings begin to pay attention to you, they will have no choice than to also pay attention to you. All of a sudden, you who were irrelevant before, you have now become a VIP, very important person. Only God can take you from here to there. When people reject you, don't let the rejection discourage you. David was rejected when he went to the field, but he was not discouraged because he knew who he was. He knew that he could take Goliath down. So don't be discouraged when people reject you, but instead let it improve you, let it challenge you until you get to a point where the people who rejected you begin to need you. David's family rejected him. David's brothers rejected him. But now they needed him. It may not necessarily be your family or your brethren that are rejecting you. It could be somebody that you trust. It could be people that you rely on. It may be the people around you. It may be the people in your circle that are rejecting you. But don't let that rejection stop you. David volunteered to kill Goliath, and they looked down on him. They gave him that, "You are not the type that we need. You are not the type that should be here. How can you think that you will be the one to defeat Goliath?" And some of us, that's how our lives are. We even volunteer, but they say, "You are not the person that we are looking for." Rejection. But don't let it stop you. You might be experiencing this rejection for a reason. God might just be shutting certain doors in your face. Why? Because he wants to take you to a new dimension. In God's dimension, what worked for you before may not work for you anymore. What worked for you previously may not work for you in this new dimension. For David, slings and stones worked for him outside the palace. He used a sling and a stone to kill Goliath. That was what David was used to. Anytime he was looking after the sheep, when an enemy comes to attack the sheep, he will bring out his sling and his stone. So the sling and the stone, they worked outside the palace. But in this new dimension that God has taken David to, the sling and the stone cannot work anymore. Now God has brought David into the palace. So David needed something stronger. And for this new dimension, what did David need? He needed something stronger. He needed an armor. He needed a sword. Slings and stones will no longer be able to bring down armies. But now, armors and swords is what David needed to fight armies and to win battles. There is not one battle that David lost. That was the new dimension that God brought him into. So what worked in the old dimension may not work in the new dimension that God is taking you into. So you've got to be able to recognize when God is trying to take you to a new dimension. Now, from the beginning of this message, I said the next level is different from a new dimension. Now, for David, the next level would have been an increase in flock. But no, That was not what God wanted for David. God did not want to take David into a new level. He wanted to bring him into a new dimension. And when God wants to bring you into a new dimension, he doesn't take you to the next step. What does he do? He gives you a leap. He gives you a climb so that you jump certain steps. He just catapults you from here to there. From 0 to number 1 is a step. That is the next level. But when God takes you from 0 to hero, that is a leap. He bypassed all the steps and gave you a leap. Now, the next level for David would have been living in a house and then moving to a bigger house and then another bigger house. But no, God said, I have bigger plans for you. God just moved David from living in a house to living in a palace. We serve a mighty God. He deserves a round of applause. God deserves a round of applause. It is only God that can give you a push. It is only God that can give you a leap. It is only God that can make you climb certain mountains that are so difficult for you to climb. It is only God that can take you to places where you never dreamed of that you could get to. It doesn't end here. I'm going to be continuing this series next week. Are you ready for a new dimension? Are you ready for God to take you to a new dimension?